Well, it was a historic night as Australian Ange Postecoglou, who led Tottenham Hotspur to its first European soccer title in 41 years after beating Manchester United 1-0 in the Europa League final. The win is a bright spot for the Spurs after a disappointing domestic campaign that raised many questions about Postecoglou's future. Well, Charlie Eccleshare is a sports writer for The Athletic and he joins me now from London. Good to have you with us today. Now, the first trophy in 17 years for the Spurs, first European title in 41. Are there any words to describe what Spurs fans would be feeling right now?
Hungover, probably. And yeah, very emotional, overwhelmed. Honestly, a lot of them were getting to the point, not rationally, but we're kind of wondering, like, would this day ever come again? It had been so long and they've had so many near misses, and there's a kind of fatalism that had engulfed the club, like, oh, maybe it's just not meant to be for us. So just so many emotions right now, really incredible.
Okay, it's hard for me to sing the praises of the Spurs because I'm a lifelong United fan, just putting out the disclaimer there.
Okay.
And also, going to the management of the club, now Spurs were missing key players who were going to be certain starters in this game. Maddison, Kulusevski, Bergvall. So how did Ange orchestrate this win? Because I have to say, it was a very extremely dull game.
Yeah, it was a terrible match. But Ange kind of embraced that. And for a guy who, is so ideological and has a very attacking, entertaining way of playing, this was a very pragmatic adaptation to the circumstances. Because, yeah, they were missing pretty much all their creative midfielders. And so they kind of bypassed the midfield and said, we're going to play direct. And once they got the lead just before half-time, they sat back and basically said to Manchester United, well, can you break us down? And they couldn't. So it was kind of a tactical triumph for Ange.
Yep, so parked the bus and United couldn't get a ticket through. So let's talk a lot about Postecoglou's future now. He's at times been quite the target for the media, and one even labeling him a clown in the latest report. Has he had the last laugh here?
He's certainly been vindicated. I mean, if you think back to September when he said that he always wins a trophy in his second season at a club, and he's done just that. There'll still be people who say, okay, yeah, you've won the Europa League, but the league form was terrible. But ultimately, he's come in, he's won a trophy, he's got Spurs back in the Champions League. He's been vindicated. He's delivered on what he was asked to do. Whether that's enough to keep him in a job because of how bad the league form has been, that'll become clear in the next few days. But, right now, just a huge amount of satisfaction for him.
Yeah, I suspect that's going to be quite the catchphrase for a few weeks. I win things in the second season. So the big question is, will there be a third season for Ange Postecoglou? Will he remain at the club?
All the noises for the last few months have been, whatever happens, even if Spurs win the Europa League, Ange will go. But I've always said, even with that being the case, like, yes, rationally, that I'm sure that was the plan. That was Spurs' plan, not to get blinded by what might happen in Europe because the league form has been so bad. But you have a night like last night where, you put aside 20 years of hurt, of near misses, and you finally get over the line. I think it makes it a much, much harder decision for the Spurs board than it would have been a few weeks ago, certainly a few months ago, when everyone was pretty unanimous that it was done. Suddenly they've got a big decision to make, and look, the next few days are going to be really interesting.
Yeah, do you think Ange Postecoglou will be given credit for, yes, it was a terrible domestic season. They are still in the Premier League. They won the Europa, first bit of silverware. Was it an appreciation of the problems the club has been going through, and that it's not really an issue of the manager? You can put anyone there. That there's that appreciation now that this is a winning manager that can take the club, to a different direction in the future, a more successful one.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an appreciation that it's an incredibly difficult job. The Spurs manager's job has been a bit of a poison chalice. You think of even serial winners like Jose Mourinho, Antonio Conte, they've gone there and flopped. So there is an acknowledgement of that. And so in that context, for Ange to win a trophy is even more impressive. But there's also a sense that the league is a more reliable indicator of where a team is at. Now, slightly different this season because Spurs more or less binned off the league in about February. But even so, those performances were so bad, whereas cups teams can go on runs. So I think that's what they've got to weigh up, whether you're going to focus on this extreme high of last night or the fairly consistent lows throughout the season in the league. It's not clear cut, but it's a huge decision they've got to make now.
Yes. So Spurs, they're going to get a bit of a windfall, not only for winning Europa, but also all the tens of millions that they will get when they get to the Champions League next season. If Ange Postecoglou were to remain, will the club back him in the transfer window?
Yeah, I think they would. And that's also why it's such a big decision, because whoever you keep on as manager, you're going to be investing, let's say 100 million around that mark in the summer. And so you want to be really sure that is the guy you want, because what you don't want to happen is spend all that money in the summer and then come November you say, oh, actually, yeah, we're sacking you. And then you get a new guy in and you've suddenly got all these signings who were for the old guy and not the guy you've brought in. So there will be backing. Like you say, they've got this big, roughly £100 million windfall from being in the Champions League now. So that will go on, some of that will go on new players and, renewing existing players. It makes it easier to hold on to players. So they're in a much stronger position. And yeah, do they want to invest in Ange or in someone else?
Who might be that someone else if they decide Ange is not the person?
So the front runners have been Iriola, who's the Bournemouth manager, Thomas Frank at Brentford, Marco Silva at Fulham. But that's another really important element of this. There isn't like an absolutely outstanding candidate just waiting in the wings to come in. I think if there was, then that might make things harder for Ange, but there isn't. So yeah, that's a consideration as well, that there isn't an outstanding candidate necessarily to come in and replace him.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting next even 24 hours. I do want to just painfully ask one question about United here. Where to for a club that's been, has fallen down so far down from the summits, the highs of the Alex Ferguson era? Where do the problems lie? The ownership, management, or players themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to kick you when you're down, but, kind of a bit of everything. Yeah, everything that you just described. I mean, I found it almost unbelievable just how bad United were yesterday. I thought they offered so little. Maybe if you're looking for a kind of blessing in disguise, they won't be in Europe next season. They can just focus on the Premier League and they'll have fewer games. Often that can help teams, that less packed schedule. I think the manager's going to come under more pressure because I think he's been given a bit of a pass. And I get that, he came in midway through the season. But for there to be so little improvement, in fact, they've actually got worse. And maybe that's a necessary step if this is a long-term thing. But that's an issue, and clearly, the hugely unpopular owners. And it kind of starts from the very top and comes down, I think.
Okay, I am hoping this is rock bottom. Charlie Eccleshare, really good to have you on the program with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Cheers.